Well, I went to the national school at Kirkby, and I don't think I learnt very much, but I can recite the names of the mountains of the Pennine Range, Crossfell, Micklefell, etc. And I learnt my times tables, but nothing else very much.
The first two classrooms you had
were downstairs. You started off in the infants, and then you moved into the next room. Then you went upstairs to the one overlooking the street, and then the one overlooking the playground. And then you went downstairs into the one near the road.
Yeah.
And if you stayed on past 11, which I didn't, you were then transferred to the big hall. And you had two classes of about 30 children each in each class, with one teacher. They were wonderful. Teachers couldn't do it today. And really, we had a wonderful education at Kirkby National School. I'm glad I went there, and I'm glad my children went there.
I still have an old report, of headmaster report. Could do better. Too interested in sport. Should be more clerical.
I can remember that I just couldn't get the hang of knitting. I got into trouble for not being able to knit.
If there's one thing we were taught at Kirkby National School, it was how to sew. And if you did a stitch that Bessie Wilson could see, you got rapped with the edge of a ruler. We learnt to sew.
They show you how to dig, how to plant things. And you go into the rugby club off Raygarth. On the left, that used to be the school gardens. And part of the lesson was to learn how to garden and grow vegetables. That was a lesson, complete, 2 hours or whatever.
Well, we used to have to dig for them, and then he'd say to me, right, Sedgwick, get the wheelbarrow and take a wheelbarrow full of potatoes down to the canteen, because the canteen was where the library is.
That's what happened to all the vegetables and stuff. People would go and buy it, you know, cheaper meals. And the lady there used to cook it all.
Mrs. Picknell was a cook, 5 pence a week. I don't like that, Mrs. Picknell. Anything I cook's very good. You don't refuse anything.
What were your favourite playground games? I mean,
Well, we used to play a lot of marbles. You know, things like this have all gone, haven't they? Eh? Pop alley. You know, you used to get them out of a bottle. There used to be in a bottleneck.
And I can remember playing in the shed underneath the school, playing things like, what time is it, Mr. Wolf? And playing on the concrete flat bit in the middle.
We always did drill. We didn't do exercises. Well, did you not go to Kirkby School? Did you not have to go down onto the flagstones, and have to do drill?
It was just a concrete width about 14 foot by about 20, 30 foot. And that's where you did your PT on there, and exercises and such, and photographs. There you can see it on them photographs.
Well, Doris Hill always thought she would be a film star. Yes, she was good at school, in the school plays and that. Bobby Wright had the fish and chips business here.
but it's still the one in the same place down on...
Oh, yes, Jingling Lane,
Yeah.
yes. My sister. Ivy Moss. Fancy calling a girl Ivy Moss. They had Red Dragon, I think. Sonny Hartley. Poor Sonny, aye. He wasn't just 100%, put it that way. Some didn't live in Kirkby, they walked to school. How did you get to school? Oh, we walked. You see, now it's different, isn't it? There's buses everywhere.
We went to school in snow this deep. It used to be snowing at our school after lunch, and it'd get about 3 inch deep on top of windowsill. And teachers would say, Bainbridge, Blencarn, Bonus, get your coats on and get home. And they used to walk across fields out of back of there and come out at the top of Kirkby Motors on Kendall Road, Spittle Farm and that. Walk home.
I think I remember being sent home from school because the outlying children couldn't get in. You see, a lot lived out of Kirkby. There was that much snow, and so we were pleased, like, no school.
I remember 47, there was snowdrift higher than Wagon at Killington. They brought the Territorial Army from Kendal to dig it out. And then they complain about an inch on the road. The tragedy, closing schools.
I liked school. Nice teachers. If you behaved yourself.
The main teachers were Mr. Armour, Miss Wilson, Miss Robinson.
Bessie Wilson, she had a club foot, and she couldn't reach me to clap me round here, or she used to thump me in the back.
And she had 2 classes in one room, two different classes, 2 different lessons, and was the best teacher I have had in my life. She was brilliant. She was stern, got a clip round the ear, your boot on, up, thrown across the room, kick up the backside if you needed it. But by Jove, we loved her to bits.
And then there was a evacuee teacher called Miss Lackenby, I remember her.
Mrs. Crabtree.
Crabtree, oh yeah, Millie Crabtree. Yeah, she used to live on Greenside there. Armour, George Armour.
Yes, I do remember having Mr. Armour. Behind me sat his cousin, who was a tease and used to provoke him. And right beside him was a stack of canes. And because I sat in front, I usually got the cane that Mary was supposed to have. He didn't mind so long as he got one of us.
I can't remember anyway. Well, of course, Sid Newton was headmaster.
He'll be gone. Yeah, Sid Newton.
He wasn't the most popular of headmasters.
Yeah. Mr. Newton. He was a man that give you the cane. You get the cane for nothing there. I run out of the arch door where we're talking about, along the pavement through that little wicker work into the side, and he caught me, says, you into the hall. When I went into the hall, stroke a cane. I'm responsible for you at school. He said, you could have get knocked down by the car and killed. There wasn't a car on the road. He went, well, if you saw a car, it was one in a town. You could have got knocked down and killed. He used to love giving it, I think.
It was what we used to call the spare room, which was noted for giving you a cane or putting someone in do the lessons in there on their own, which I've been in many a time.
Teachers dealt with you there and then. If you needed your backside slapping, you got it done there and then. Or a cuff around the ear or whatever.
Yeah, other teachers used to leave a ruler on the back of your knuckles and things like that. Edge way up.
If you went home and said, I got a good hiding at school, well, you get another one when you got home. That was it. Well, if you misbehaved there, what are we up to? Don't do it again.
I used to have blotting paper, you know, because you're writing with a pen, an ordinary pen, and you used to suck it into a ball and a ruler and let it fly when it was bending down or something. George Army, you see, when... and he'd wonder where it come from, you know. It was all over the place. It was blotting paper, it was on ceilings. And, oh, I spare room, cane. You've been at it again, Newton would say. You've been at it again. Put that hand out.
Right across there. Used to run into the cloakroom and get cold water and soap, trying to get burnt out, but it never did any good. It was just fallacy, was that. Rub some soap on it.
Not as well behaved with other teachers as with me.
Yeah, they'd be in jail today. And it did us no harm. You didn't do it again, you know. You never went for a second helping of that cane if you did, you know. We all said, let's go and when he's not here, we'll go and smash cane up. It was right on top shelf.
In his office?
He was about 6'6", no, in the main hall. He was about 6'6" and he could open it, but we were nowhere near it. We'll get a stool and get it. We never did.
Oh, yes. So I've always gone to St Mary's. My mother had been a strict Methodist, and when she and my father married, his father was a Congregationalist, they decided to join forces and go to St Mary's. It was the accepted thing. It was part of life. It's what you did.
Mother did. She used to always go to church. And my sister did as well, like, but you know, you had to have a, you know, better clothes on and such like.
Did everyone go? Was it as busy as...
The church was packed. It isn't now, but it was then. And you didn't get children running up and down and making the noise, a commotion like you do these days. We went to church and we knew what we'd gone for and we were reverent and behaved ourselves.
When I was at the national school, because it was a Church of England school, our first lesson every morning was scripture.
We were taught great chunks of the Bible off by heart, by rote, which I remember to this day. You see, it was a church school, don't forget, and that we started off with a service every morning, and that the vicar came in every week with his dog, there in the hall. Woo.
And I can remember a Sunday afternoon Sunday school as well.
I mean, your better clothes you put on for Sunday school. Mm.
We went to the Sunday school and then walked down into church. And were in the service until the sermon when we came out again. But I can remember sitting in church. The Sunday school sat on the left, behind the organ, as it were, and looking at the fan lights, the gas lights on the pillars in the church. I loved them. They were sort of somehow a lot more personal than electric lights in the ceiling. Well, I was christened by the Reverend Percival Brown, who I don't think was the most popular of clergymen. Then let's see, who did we have after him? The Reverend Kirkpatrick, who was there during the war.
Oh yes, I do remember Kirkpatrick, yes. He wasn't very well liked.
Why not?
I don't know, it's his attitude, I think.
He was a droll man, was Mr. Kirkpatrick, the Reverend Kirkpatrick.
He used to visit, he would visit every parishioner. I'm sure he would visit every parishioner during the year. People don't do that unless invited now. It was quite an agony because he had no small talk, really. And though I can remember going to 2 Christmas parties for the choir, and he allowed us to play hide and seek all over the house. So he seemed to understand young people, even though he couldn't, make small talk, really. I can remember hiding under a bed. Amazing.
And another time, this was something to do with Kirkby, and the Reverend Kirkpatrick was there. And Dad said, "Do you know, Reverend Kirkpatrick, you owe me a pint. Do you remember I got you one? Come on, let's go into well, it was the Fleece in those days, not the Orange Tree." And they all trooped in. And he said, "I didn't owe you a pint." And Dad said, "No, but they were all thirsty and it was the only way I could get you in." And they all went in. It was really very human underneath it all, but some of them tend to be a bit pompous.
I can't remember the vicar. And I can remember going to the vicarage and all, but... No, we used to come down to church from school quite periodically. Confirmation classes and things like that. Ben Shaw, the verger there, was a fantastic man. He had everything spotless. That clock, he said, wasn't 10 seconds wrong against Big Ben. His pride was that clock, being dead right. And he used to mow all the churchyard himself, you know. Tip all the grass down the bank and into the river.
Other churches around Kirkby?
There was a Congregational, there was a Methodist, and there was a Catholic room.
There were next to no Catholics in Kirkby. I don't know what the historical reason is.
If you went down, now which yard was it? It was opposite the baker's, yes. It was Armisted's plumber's shop in my day. I think it's now, what is it? They change so frequently now. And he went down the yard and it was up some steps. It was an upper room. And that's all they had. And the Holy Father came from Hornby to take the service in this one room behind Armisted's plumbers. It was very different, yes, it was different.
Monday morning was washing morning. 4 o'clock in the morning she used to get up and light the fire. Saturday we had to go down Lilywood and collect wood in a close swill to put under the fire to boil the water, because it all had to be boiled. The sheets were boiled, and then they were put into dolly tubs with the dolly legs, and then they were put dolly blue in to whiten them more. Then they were rinsed off, then they were put through the mangle, and she'd take them up and hang them on the line. And the water that was left over, she used to take down in the buckets and scrub all the front door steps and the back door steps, swill the yard out with it. It was nothing wasted. Hard work. And between that, she'd be baking at least 8 and 10 loaves of bread, and still ironing at 9 at night. So they were fair days, weren't they?
And she'd do all that washing, she'd do all that in the yard?
She'd do all that in the wash house.
Right.
There was a communal wash house for the 4 houses. I can see her now in there.
Oh yes, Monday was wash day.
Oh, it was always Mondays. Always Mondays.
Where would she do the washing?
Oh, in the wash house here, at the back of the house. Oh yes, the backyard. Aye. That's mother. That's my brother, youngest brother. Dolly tub and mangle, pegging out and bringing in. when we were all at home, when there was a lot of us, she used to take them up to the drying ground. That was at Queen Square.
Beckhead, there's an alley, there's a alleyway through. And it used to be the old drying field where they used to dry all the clothes.
If you had a lot of clothes, yes. There was a lot of lines across. People that lived in the street would go.
There was two ladies down in town called Willans. They used to wash for the gentry who could afford to pay them. Somewhat not like, but they used to go down, where I was telling you, what we call the drying field, past my workshop, to hang all the washing out. But that was all done on a Monday.
You didn't have a bathroom in the house, did you? Toilet in the house?
No, we'd one outside, but till they altered the house.
Toilet outside to walk from here to that cart through the snow in the winter.
I don't think you ever bathed in them days, you know, because there were no facilities.
I don't think anybody did much, did they?
We used to bike up to Keystwick. There was a men's place up there. You could play billiards or something like that, you know, or a game of darts or something. And you could also have a bath for sixpence. And there was a chap called Tommy Howarth. He used to look after stove and that, and to see his hot water, you could have a bath for sixpence. We'd be about 10 or 12 then, you know. Hey, we used to bike up there and bike back, you see, and of course with no lights on bikes we were supposed to have in them days, you see. And I was coming down Fairbank, down the hill, full belt. Well, there was a bloke called Joe Simpson, and he was policeman, and hit him. I went off, flew off bike, rolled down the road, picked bike up and back up, gone. I'll get you, he said. But he didn't know who it was, he said. I'll have you. Oh dear, that's a long time ago, yeah.
Do you remember playing anywhere particular in Kirkby? Down by the river or?
No, with a playfield. We used to always say to Mother, going to the playfield, there's swings and just a sand pit and a couple of swings. It was very different then.
We used to play around Kirkby. Yeah. I used to be sledging till 9 o'clock at night. That deep of frozen snow and a full moon, and it was as bright as daylight.
Oh, aye, you're down Hollow Basin. You know where the rugby club is? Well, just over there, there's a big dip. And it would look tremendous in them days. It took you ages to get to the top, and then down you come in 2 or 3 seconds, you know.
I once remember going on my sledge and going into the park back, down that hill, and I couldn't stop, it was like shot eyes. And it shot straight off the end and landed in back. And I'd shot that. And I was walking through, and it was freezing like mad, and I was walking through churchyard. My legs were cramped, they were all chapped to bits in here, with ice on my trousers, rubbing my legs. My mother said, "You fool, get that hot bath." Tin bath come down, and with water outside at fire, we hadn't any hot water like that. Used to boil it outside at fire and put it in like that, sat me in it, put a blanket round me. He never took any out though. We used to sledge down Mitchellgate, from top of O's Cottage, straight down Mitchellgate, and round to John Butcher's old shop. No, you knew there was no cars, no nothing, there it was.
Was Mitchellgate, did it feel like a community within Kirkby?
Yeah, because there was a lot of kids in Mitchellgate.
Sorry?
There were a lot of children in Mitchellgate. There was more kids in Mitchellgate then. There were 7 of us, 7 of my cousins, 6 of Hartley's, 2 of Holmes's, 22, 3 of Sills, Hills, Fox's. House had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are all in Michigan, 35. We used to play football with a shut-up tin. Mitchellgate tin can dribblers, they used to call them. Tin can dribblers. We used to tie a bit of string onto a doorknob here and one across the road, because there'd never any traffic light. But leave about 6 inches slack, then knock on both doors, one would open it and they would be gone like this. Pulling it out of each other's hand. We used to be laughing like stuff about 6 yards up, ready to bolt again. But it was harmless fun, wasn't it?
We had huts all over the shop, you know. Gang huts, as they call them.
We used to have a gang on the rugby field, about 10 of us, and with a little methylated spirit stove. We used to get a few potatoes, and Peter, our father, had a bakehouse and used to bring the lard, a bit of lard. We used to fry make chips in the old wooden hut on the rugby field.
It was after Sunday school that my friend and I went scrumping in Lune Field.
Nothing bad. Pinching a few apples up New Road, and there was a high wall. We used to climb up this wall, and there was these apple trees at the other side, and we used to someone would up on the shoulders and climb up and pass apples down and come back down, and there was police there. Look, are you going to enjoy them, you think?
I mean, you were frightened to death of the police. I was once chased by one of them, Joe Simpson, constable, and I come down New Road, and it was winter time, dark, and he had a black Labrador, and I come down New Road and I crossed by the bakehouse, and I ran in the bakehouse and jumped into a tree chest, fighting to death, and his dog found me. He pulled me out with my collar like this. Don't let me catch you out of dark again. No.
There was always 2 walking about at night, trying shop doors, seeing as they were locked, you know.
And of course the police station was in Horsemarket, and the room with the steps up from the Swine Market side was the magistrate's court.
With 2 policemen then and a sergeant. They were always after us. You know, on the playing field, which is now all sorts of stuff on it, you know, there was a hut up there, and we once set fire to that. We were lighting a fag up or something, you know, and set fire to some rubbish, and went up in flames. A long time ago, and we had to go around to the horse market, and who had matches? Got him around his house and give us a lecture, you know. Father was lining us up. Only got a good hiding when you got home. You know, things like that, but nothing too bad.
Sergeant Black, he used to throw the hammer on the island.
Well, I remember my eldest sister was in Sergeant Black's drill, at the drill hall. I've met other people who were part of Sergeant Black's drill team, and they used to put on exhibitions, I believe. I was too young, I'm glad to say, to be in this gym class.
It was strict. I know I threw a firework down Mitchellgate, and he caught me. He said, "Come here." He said, "Do I take you to your father and mother, or do you go to the gym?" I said, "I'll go to the gym, 6 o'clock tomorrow night." And he put me through a hell. Over the pummel horse and on the rings. I mean, all the hooks are still in the ceiling. Bouncing about and run around the gym 20 times. And tomorrow night. And tomorrow night. I didn't want to do hotels when I come out of there. I was weak as a kitten. That was the main thing, I think, was discipline. You know, you wouldn't do it again after he'd finished with you, because you didn't want another week at gym. I was once chased with a fella from off Mitchellgate. We were playing knock and I knocked on his door. And I thought, he won't chase me, he was fairly old. And I looked behind him, he's coming down the road. So I goes and comes down Chapel Lane. I gets to the bottom of Chapel Lane, and he's coming down after me down Main Street. So I shot straight upstairs into Picturehouse and went right to the front and sat down on the seat. And Tusha comes down with his light and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Somebody's chasing me." He said, "Get out." I said, "I daren't."
Yes, upstairs. That was where the cinema was.
You can still work out from the shape of the windows and arches. It was just a door, and we went up steep stairs.
You just went up steps. On the left was the pay box. You went through big green thick curtains. Torch down side like that. Sit down there.
Fred Talon used to see you to his seats with a torch, you know. "And I don't want any noise," he would say. "I don't want any noise, keep quiet." Or else you're out.
And you could get peanuts. And Sonny Hartley used to sit about 3 rows back from the front. Sonny, poor Sonny, he had a mental disability. Children used to sit there flicking peanuts at him and catch them in his mouth. And that was an entertainment in itself. But he was very good at it.
Wooden chairs at the front and benches. But then there were some plush seats, you know, with not upholstery, with cloth on them, you know.
And they were proper cinema-type seats.
9p for a seat. And the chummies, if there was 2 together, were 1 and 3, I'll say, or 1 and 6, I'm not sure.
We used to go courting there, and was it 1 and 6pence for a chummy?
Oh, you could sit closer together.
And of course, the cinema was in the concert hall. And the concert hall was built in, I think, 1854. But the date's there, 1854. And travelling players used to come, and repertory companies.
In the 20s, it was referred to as the concert hall, but there were films from the beginning of, because my mother talked of silent films, as well as having concerts and dances.
The Conservative Ball would be held there. And there was a balcony, just the width of a row of seats. And the balcony with the seats was for the aristocracy, you see, so they could see what was going on, but not mix with the lesser persons, you see. Mm.
The projector shone from that level. Not, I don't think actually on the gallery, perhaps from behind it, but the gallery wasn't used for seating as a cinema.
The projecting lads used to come down onto that. You know, put film in it, run for, say, 3/4 of an hour, and then they have to change it, splice it up.
And Harry Willen's dad was a manager. And that's how Harry Willen got to be able to operate the machines. And of course, they only had one machine, so when they got the end of a reel, that reel was taken off and another reel put on, so there was a little gap of no cinema, nothing happening.
I've seen a couple of fires when it just flamed up the screen like that. Been roasting where the film was caught fire twice. Because my cousin was one of the projectionists. Yeah, there was some queues, right, for a decent film on. Oh, I've seen it queuing back to past Preston's clock, back to the Out Court. And they used to go, Sedby, you see, they used to film at Sedby and then come to Kirkby. There was a van used to bring the filmers round. I can remember big, you know, boxes like that, big round boxes with films in.
We had about 3 performances a week. On the Saturday, it was always something. Well, the matinee was always something that children could go to. So we were allowed to go, if we'd been good, to the pictures on Saturday afternoon, only if Mother thought it was something suitable. So we looked forward to Saturday afternoons.
We only went to pictures if they were like a cowboy on or something like that. Lassie, come home.
And you'd go and this film was on and there's a girl hanging upside down that was going to be run over by a train, and then it stopped. So you had to go next week to see what happened next.
First one I ever saw was the Shirley Temple.
There was one coloured film I think I saw there. Was there a coloured film made before the war?
Oh, I used to love Bud Abbott and Lou Costello films. I've never forgotten I Know Where I'm Going, and we were taken from school to see Henry V.
And some people went, you know, every change of film, about, you know, 3 times a week they'd go to the pictures. My dad was a regular film goer. He was a mate of Harry Willen's dad, and so he used to go up into the balcony thing, and he had his dog, old dog with him called Kip, that used to sit under his feet and and go to sleep mainly. And there was a film called all about Rin Tin Tin, who was an Alsatian dog, and I remember the talkies coming when sound appeared, you see, and Rin Tin Tin, that was on a sound thing, and this dog came on and barked, and this poor old dog of Dad's called Kip, he jumped up and went through a couple of the uprights that were broken and landed on somebody's lap down below.
Oh, it was great. Oh, you'd have loved it, John, you'd have loved it.
Everything was an excitement in them days, you know, because there was nothing else. It was a hell of a thing to go to pictures, really, you know.
We loved it. Mm.
I played in 8 band rooms in Kirkby, shifted out from one to another. And the first band was in King's Arms Yard, and there was a blacksmith underneath, and the band room was on top.
And with benches all round, you know, and cupboards to put your instruments in. And Nelson Glover had ironmongers, shoe horses and all sorts of stuff underneath.
And it caught fire, burnt out, so it to move. Mr. Dennison was bandmaster. He'd be chewing tobacco. He used to chew tobacco, nicotine was dropping off his chin end. And then he'd come and pop it in his waistcoat pocket. And then we used to say, if we wanted to go to pictures at a certain night and some a good picture on, you know, you say, who's going to ask him if we can go to pictures? You say, well, go on, I'll ask him then. Mr. Dennison, what? Can we go to pictures now? Pictures? Pictures be buggered, he would say, and the button would hit on somebody. Then about half an hour later he would say, go on then, clear off to pictures. Don't be late next week. So we used to go into the cupboards and round into Picturehouse, like flashes. The Kirkby Brass Band, they were all called up. Funny enough, with no girls in the band. Now there are probably some more than boys. But there were no girls ever in our brass band. But they're all on there in our picture band, you know.
Now this is the brass band with James Dennison at the head, bandmaster Jim Dennison. On the right with the bass is Billy Fisher, who used to have the shoe shop. Myself. Gordon Holmes is on, and he would be joined at the same time as Jack.
No Jack Cedric on that then?
No, there's no Jack on there.
That's a shame.
I joined when I was 11, February 1943. He just come round, or said to your parents, "What's your lad doing?" Well, send him up to the band room. So mother took me. February, I can remember, there was about 4 inches of snow on the ground. And I goes up there and he gives me an instrument, short trousers, because you never had long trousers till about 14. And I coming up to late school leaving age, he said, "What are you doing when you leave school?" I said, "Well, Mr. Howard asked me to work in bakehouse." Mr. Dennis said, "You don't want a dirty job like baking," he said. "You'll be flour and dough up," he said, and you're going like this with his fingers. And I said, "Oh, well," he said, "come and work for me, painting. A pair of white overalls." I thought, and he said, "Well, I'd wear white overalls on it big." And I thought, well, if I go to Jack Howard, he'll play out with me at band. I did on it. I thought I'll have to see how I work for him. "Have you made up your mind who you're going to work for?" "I'm going to work for you." "Right." Said, "You pay me white overall," he said, "and I'll give you a putty knife and a scraper and a dust brush." That was me.
We used to go to Pilling, sports, play at sports. We used to go to Dent, play at Dent Sports. We used to go around all the villages, and in that day there was Sam Morris, we had a coach, you know, an old coach. He used to take rugby players away in it as well. And Joe Sloan used to be driver. He used to stink awful with his fumes, you know. He put up with it, like, you know, somehow. I thought it was grand going to these sports because you got grand food, you know, and drinks. Aye, we thought a lot about it.
And this month I'm just starting my 75th year without missing a year in the brass band. Yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
As you go out of Kirkby, going out Town End way, you knew about the tennis courts there, didn't you?
Can you tell me about the tennis courts?
Well, there was none of that council building then, council houses, and none of those were there then. Yes, there was a gang of us who played, and it was nice and handy, you see. I mean, if you were working in Kirkby, just down tools and go and play tennis. You used to take our tea onto the courts as well. But no, it was just handy.
Its only way to get out of Kirkby was to play a sport, rugby. There was a team then going, and me and my mate, Graham Garnett, we joined the club together, and we travelled around with them as reserves for a start, and then we gradually got into the team. And we gradually got into the team. We could get away at weekends, but with no money. I mean, you were lucky if you could afford fish and chips, and to some of the older players would maybe get you lemonade or shandy, you know, and said back at the bus at 10 o'clock, ready back for home. We were down Fleetwood and down that way, you know. So it was great stuff, like, you know. And we used to hang around. They used to meet, did the rugby committee on a Monday at the King's Arms. Could see them through the window. And the secretary, Billy Proctor, used to come and put the team sheet on the window. We were hanging about, you know, to see if we were in the team. But no, it was grand. We used to train there, and we trained in the Royal Garage. It was all big, massive garage then, and then a run round hop house. I was captain in 54, 55, and we had a job to get a team, you know. And I was going into pubs at dinner time looking if anybody could get routed out to fit them up with some shorts and boots to play to make the team up, you know. But we struggled on, and now, of course, it's 3 teams and, I don't know, about 300 juniors. You know, it's terrific.
And what about cricket? Was that something they always played at Lune Field?
Sandy Acre. But they used to be just gentry play cricket then. Land agents and teachers and that, they could have time off. That was across from the Brow, the big field down. That was a cricket field at one time, not before my time. And then they moved from there to Lune Field. It was small, hexagon-sided, and there was a tree at every corner, red currant trees. And there used to be a hexagon-sided building, and it come from Sandy Acre. It used to open out on big iron bars. It was just like a big mushroom. Lord and Lady Henry Bentinck gave this ground as long as cricket was played. They gave it as a thing for the town. As long as cricket was played, the rent was free. And it was just a shake of hands.
And the football field, has that always been at Lune Field?
It was always a cricket field, as I can remember. Not always a football field. Because I played football on the field going up to the hoop hole on the left.
Yes, they had one up about hoop hole, and we used to play rugby on a Saturday and soccer on Sundays, but it was only local teams, you know. Casterton, Barben, Lupton, Hutton Roof, they all had a team. But you were on a field somewhere. And Kirkby had a field at Keystwick. We used to change in the old rugby pavilion, grandstand as we call it, and we used to run across and down, and it was a wood. And across that field on the right going into Keystwick. And that Robert Nicholson let us put posts up. He got more injuries with football than he did with rugby. The farm lads in big nail boots, you know, and we were in slippers.
Do you remember anything much from guides?
I can remember just enjoying the fun of it, you know, and tying knots and... And the guide room then was what must have been the stable loft, I think, for what is now called the rectory, which was then called the vicarage. We went up a wooden staircase at the back, and this lovely huge big room.
And that's the Kirkby Lonsdale Cubs. I think there were some scouts as well, but I was one of the Cubs. They were run by the congregational minister in the basement of the Congregational Chapel, which is now the Roman Catholic Church. Bill Fisher was one of the scouts, and the McFarlane boys, but we did all sorts of exciting things. Went camping in the summer.
Oh, camp cooking. Oh, that was a bit of a disaster. We trekked over Castanfell down into Easdale, is it? Yes, the down and the beck in the bottom. We made these dampers, they were called. I don't think we rubbed two sticks together. We probably had matches, but we did have a fire, and you had to cook these doughy things on sticks in the ashes, hot ashes. Well, and then we ate them. Well, it was just a lump of horrible black dough, you know, mostly ash.
Do you remember where any of your camps were?
Keld, yeah, in Yorkshire. Just Keld in the middle of summer, June,
Yeah.
when the strawberries were edible. That's it. That's I remember that. And of course, we camped on a flat field next to a stream. Then there was downpour, so we had to evacuate the camp and go and live in this stay in this farm, which was great fun. The reverend who was in charge, he slept in the farmyard. He slept in the farmhouse, and we all slept in a barn. But unfortunately, he was more friendly with the farmer's daughter, and she popped in to keep him warm, and that was another story.
And then we thought we would try and walk an easier way back. Well, apart from coming out almost at Leck, there wasn't an easier way out. So we were totally exhausted. And I got back home, and my mother had cooked this beautiful meal of roast chicken. And this was when chicken was an absolute treat. And it was just my favourite meal of all time. But I was feeling so sick, I couldn't eat it. I was too sick and too tired to digest anything. So I just had to go to bed. That has lived in my mind forever.
I'd meet my mates and we'd go off down to the river and we'd build a dam, or we'd have a ship with 3 funnels on it made of a bit of wood with cork stuck on the top and a bit of string attached to it so it would go out into the stream. I learnt to swim in Parkside, which is the bit that goes from Ruskin's View up back past the farm. That was my place to learn to swim. And you could walk into the middle of the river and then swim to the back to my granddad. I only discovered years later that he couldn't swim at all, but he was a fisherman, but he knew the river.
Yes, the river was the only place to learn to swim, so I'm not a very good swimmer because it depended on heat waves, whether it was warm enough to swim in the river.
No, they used to start swimming, you know where the island is? Well, at the far end, it was about that deep. We used to learn to swim there to start with before you attempted the bridges.
Ah, that's where I learned to swim. Well, it's where we all learned to swim. We always take our sandwiches onto island, have a picnic. My island grew a lot of all sorts of plants because it used to flood over, and seas used to come down with flood. There are lots of different plants and flowers used to go on island. Have you heard of burnet? It's a herb like that, claret colour. You used to pick heads off, and Mother used to make wine of it. Burnet wine.
There used to be a bridge across, a little wooden bridge across to the island from bottom of Brow there.
People used to cross to the island on the little bridge and have picnics there, and it was great because of course it belongs to the town. There were concrete stanchions in the river, and the bridge were actually chained on so that the river came up in flood, and they floated. Most times you could just hook them back again. Occasionally they came unhooked. Kirkby would ring Lancaster and say, "Hey, we've lost our bridge," and they pick it up and send it back. But unfortunately, as you know, there was a tragedy and they were never put back.
But that's sad.
The amount of water that goes down in flood is enormous. I have seen it, the water over, where it's called the farmhouse there. I've seen the water running in front of the farmhouse.
There was a time when the river flooded and somebody reported that to the RSPCA. There was a horse on the island. What was my father going to do about it? My father said, "What do you want me to do? I can't swim across." "Well, the water's up round her belly. She'll drown." He said, "She won't." He said, "That horse has got a head on it. When the river goes down, she'll swim back." When the river went down a couple of feet, Dad went and down the bottom of Millbrow and shouted, "Come on, Dot." Pricked up her ears and swam across.
My uncle Jack was fast on it, fishing. He was fishing and he saw it coming up and he come onto this side and he couldn't get across. So they had to put a rubber dinghy on a rope. He casted his fishing line across and got a bit of string and pulled it across. Then a rope, then pulled the dinghy across and jumped in and pulled him back.
Fishing, the one thing I never did was fishing. Only kids with minnows and net, you know, but my father used to sell licences and permits. It was a part-time job. Flyers and all sorts of boxes of flyers in the house he had.
I remember when I was in my teens, my father did an afternoon surgery, and if it was a smallish one, there weren't that many people came in. He used to go down at between 3 and 6 when he had an evening surgery for people. He used to go down to the river, which on one occasion he caught 3 salmon below the Stanley Bridge. I was never as keen as or anything like as good as my father, but there were a lot more fish in the river. Now, it's too powerful a river for the salmon to come up here. But having said that, I found a salmon parr, i.e. born in the river, last year. But I don't think anybody catches salmon in the Lune now.
I've heard of odd people going down and tickling trout.
Oh, tickling trout, yeah.
But was that allowed?
No. Nobody used to do it.
When the weather was like this and the river was very low, if you go to Ruskin's View and look down into the stream, there's some very shallow water. And if you laid on one of these rocks for long enough, with your arm in the water,
And if you tickle the trout, and then out they come.
not of course that I ever did that sort of thing, you see, but I'm just telling you what boys did.
We used to cook down the river, get these eels, as I was telling, find a tin can that had been washed up, fill it full of water, light a fire and cook the eel in it and get a stick and sharpen it to a point and eat it. And you never took any harm now. They say you can't do that. Eaten many an eel. We were lads, we're not like the kids sitting looking at a computer now. We were out.
You used to go skating up down by the church there, you know, down the brow, where I've been talking about, where the river bends round.
I never played ice hockey down there, but I certainly skated down there.
Well, we had the skates. They had the skates in them days, you know, proper skates, so shoes like, with skates and the blades on the bottom. Playing football on it and hockey and all sorts, you know. But you don't see that now.
Racing round Kirkby Hall corner, it was this deep, it was ice. Forced from about November till March. Unbelievable. It was 30-inch down in ground with frost. And I come round, racing round, about 10 of us round that corner at Kirkby Hall Bridge Brow. There was a piece of wood frozen in the river, and I hit it like that, and I went airborne, landing on my chin, split it all open. Blood up. I got a clip under the ear hole when I got home. Never mind about this. Look at your shirt.
Well, it's 9:30, it's now 2:00.
I thought it would take about half an hour.
Oh, well, I hope you don't mind.
No, I don't mind a bit. It's been rather nice delving into memories. Yeah.
You actually are jogging my memory.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I'm glad you have. Thank you very much.
No, you're
It's
welcome.
been a great help.
I've enjoyed your company.
To be perfectly honest, it's been interesting. I haven't been frightened at all. You see, you're so easy to talk to, John, but my voice is going.